Pleasers. My name is Amy Ballantyne, and I'm so excited to have my guest here, Lydia. Welcome, Lydia.
Thanks so much, Amy. I'm so excited to be here early this morning in Vancouver, but it's a real treat to be talking to you and your audience.
We're so glad to have you. And today we are talking about the connection between people pleasing and relationships. You are a Reiki master, a love and breakup coach, so many amazing things that I know you're going to share. But I'd love first to hear, have you ever been a people pleaser, and what did that look like in your life?
100%. I am definitely a recovering people pleaser and was always somebody who, in friendships and then in my adult life and romantic relationships, has aimed to prove myself and to please others because of a wanting to be liked, a deep fear of abandonment, a wanting to help others, and often it came at a self-sacrifice. I would give up myself and abandon my own needs, and then it never left me better off because I remember moments where I felt quite resentful because of it deep down, and then I would try to push that away, and it affected my energy and the way that I showed up to current relationships, new relationships. And I always thought that if I just did one more thing to show somebody how much I loved them or showed how much I cared or bend it over backwards in a certain way, that it would get me further with that person. But it it really never does. And at least in my experience, especially in the romantic relationships, it just leaves me feeling like I've lost my sense of self. And it didn't work in my last relationship at all for many reasons. Both of us on either side were just not a good match, but I just found myself pleasing and trying to do things that made his experience easier, made it easier on him. And not that that's a bad thing necessarily, but when it comes from a place of that neediness and desperation versus a healthy, secure wanting to make that other person happy, then it's going to burn you out. It burns me out, certainly.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing and for being so open about that experience. And I feel like I can relate to that, and I'm sure lots of other people can relate to losing a bit of ourselves, especially at the beginning of a relationship, aiming to really find that connection point. So I'd love to know for you, how do you find, and I hate the word balance, but how do you find that place of allowing to, you know, share others' needs and your own?
Definitely. I find that place through self soothing,
Mm.
through knowing what makes me feel safe, and through continuing to develop and maintain a really beautiful and loving relationship with myself. And so I did a lot of healing after my breakup last year, got really curious, and recognized that although I thought I had a very secure attachment style, that through that relationship with a very avoidant person, I became very anxious, and it started to trickle into anxiousness and new dating situations and with potential new relationships. And so, yeah, anytime I felt triggered, because it comes from like a triggered place from an old wound or an old story from years ago, I would get curious with that trigger and love it, notice it, where is it landing in my body, and just appreciate it for telling me something, appreciate it for telling me that I'm not feeling safe right now. And then I would treat that trigger as though it was my inner child. And that's how I find balance, because I think the thing with people pleasing in relationship is it's very reactive. Often it's not that proactive wanting to meet your partner's needs, which is very lovely and healthy. It's just very reactive in the moment because you're feeling a sense of inner or outer rejection or abandonment. And so when I feel that reactive sensation coming forwards, I just hold myself in that moment. And I actually touch myself, like I give myself a hug or I do some tapping. I'm doing tapping right now in the video. And I just tell my little girl that she's safe and that there's no need to worry and that she's loved. And if I am in a relationship with somebody in the future or now going forwards in my dating life, then I will be a lot more honest about my needs, but not from a place of expectation, just of a place of I want to deepen my intimacy with a person. And so that requires also being vulnerable and telling them where you are.
Yes. Wow, that's powerful. That's really powerful. I wanna go back to attachment style. Can you tell me about that and share details of that means?
Certainly, yeah, I love talking and learning about attachment styles. And attachment theory was developed by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth. And essentially, it's the way in which we regulate and maintain a sense of safety in our relationships. And it's kind of like the brain's tracking device. And it starts from a very early age, between the ages of 0 to 7. We're very susceptible to everything around us. Our brains are mostly in a theta state, so we're absorbing everything like a sponge, and we're observing and picking up on the adults around us and what's happening, and especially our primary caregivers. And so that's kind of teaching us what it means to be in relationship with other people and what to expect and what we need to feel safe. And the thing with being a child, though, is you don't always have all of the information. You see what you see, you learn what you learn, and then you make your own further beliefs from that that get proven as you grow up. And so there's kind of three main attachment styles. The first being secure, and this is about 50% of the population. And so this is when your parents are generally sensitively attuned to your needs and you feel safe to reach out, you feel safe to ask for help, and there's no fear that you will be abandoned and that everything will be met for you. And then you grow up as an adult and you feel safe with emotional intimacy, but you're also not codependent. So it's a very nice place to be. You can self-soothe. Then there's the avoidant attachment style, and this is about 25% of the population. And avoidance generally grew up with one or both caregivers putting a lot of their needs on their child, making them grow up really fast, perhaps mothering them or over controlling them. And so when they grow up, the avoidant really craves independence. They see that intimacy or that reaching out for connection as a threat to their survival. And so when they grow up in adult relationships, anytime things start to get more serious with somebody, generally they're the ones who pull away and self-sabotage that relationship because of that deep fear. And then there's the anxious avoidant, and that's about 25% as well. And anxious has one or more caregiver that was kind of inconsistent or just not as sensitively attuned to their needs. And when they grow up in adult relationships, they crave that intimacy on such a deep level. They have a deep fear of abandonment, a deep fear of rejection, and have developed coping mechanisms, usually kind of like people pleasing, to be honest,
Yeah.
to try to get that person's attention or feel that sense of validation or worthiness. So they need a lot more reassurance in general. And so what's interesting is when you have an avoidant and an anxious together, it's kind of like a recipe for combustion. And at the beginning, they feel a lot of heat and passion. And you'll hear probably a lot of people, I'm sure people listening to this can be like, maybe I've been in one of those where it feels really intense and heavy right off the bat. And eventually somebody starts pulling away or you start wanting more and you feel anxious about hearing from them or you want to reach out all the time. And so there's that anxious avoidant dance where they're like opposite ends of a magnet kind of going against each other, and they're each proving their own deepest fears to be right. And so that just continues on that pattern, and often it gets mistaken for a deep connection. And I used to feel like that. I would sometimes be attracted, not always, but sometimes, to an avoidant partner, and I would think, oh, I have this really deep connection with them, but it was just my triggers being activated by their attachment style. And so I think the biggest thing I want people to take away from that is to learn your attachment style. Know that it's not a diagnosis. It is, it can change. It's very fluid. Of course, it's formed from an early age, but with coaching or therapy and just reading and journaling and inner work, you can certainly learn how to be with it. It's not that you're getting rid of it. I always think like healing is not getting rid of, it's just being with and loving. And so that's what I've kind of done with my anxious attachment style, which shows up more so with avoidant people, is I just notice, okay, what can I do to self-soothe in this moment, or how can I communicate better?
Mm, I like that. So, for those people who resonate with the anxious attachment style, can you provide a few more examples of what self-soothing actually might look like for others?
100%. Yeah, self-soothing looks like getting into the body. So perhaps when you feel that reactive sensation, going for a walk or doing some EFT tapping, which I have a free guide, a video guide for healing
Yeah.
your heart and letting go of somebody. It's a quick, short, easy 5 minutes. You can also YouTube a lot of EFT strips, and I feel that's a very beautiful way to really tap into the body, because you want to regulate your nervous system in
Mhm.
those moments. And so the body is just an amazing, wise tool for that. Another way is to journal what thoughts are coming up for you, to listen to your body and name where you're feeling that emotion. Are you feeling tightness in your throat? Are you feeling a contraction in your stomach? And just naming it and recognizing and bringing attention to it can actually help you process that emotion. Let yourself feel it. Don't hide it away. You actually don't need that long to process an emotion. I think it's around like 90 seconds in total in the moment. So let yourself process it, and then call somebody you trust. If you need to talk through something, you're having an anxious moment, text or call a friend and say, hey, like I'm kind of going through something right now and I just need somebody to talk to. And I think those are what I would do. And of course, going back to the inner child, like looking at that protective mechanism as that inner child who just wants to be seen. And what can you do to love it? Can you hug yourself? Can you write your inner child a letter? Can you do something playful that your inner child really loved growing up?
Amazing, amazing. And is there anything different for the abandonment attachment style? Or no, that's the second one, right?
The avoidant.
Avoidant, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, the avoidants are interesting. They definitely, I would recommend therapy for sure and talking through that. I think their self soothing is quite similar, but it's in a way that they need to practice feeling safer with intimacy. So maybe it's, when they have a conversation with a partner or they're feeling the need to pull away or have that space, it's just about then communicating more with their partner and saying, hi, like I'm feeling this way. It has nothing to do with you. I just need I need one day. And giving that person a timeline, I think makes a big difference, because what an avoidant typically might do is kind of just ghost and go off on their own. And I'm speaking from my experience. I'm not saying every avoidant does this, but what would be a good way to support your partner while also supporting your needs is just being honest, being very clear, and giving a one day, I just need this time for myself, and I'll call you tomorrow and we can talk. And I think that makes a world of a difference. And so at the end of the day, the avoidant just wants that independence and freedom, but they will resist really beautiful, deep intimacy if they're always just doing that without communicating.
Yeah. Communication is so important, right? So, so
Mm-hmm.
important. Wow. So I I wanted to ask you a question came up when we first met, our very first conversation, and I made notes. What are you willing to tolerate in a relationship? When
Mm.
when you hear that question or when you work with your clients, how do you support them or how can you share with the listeners this idea of creating boundaries of what individuals are willing to tolerate?
Yeah, that's a good question. What are you willing to tolerate? And it's really unique for everybody. And certainly through my coaching, I help people get very clear on what their non negotiables are, what their boundaries are, what their nice to haves are. I think being clear about 5 core areas that you want to feel in a relationship can really help determine the behaviors and the actions that you take and how you'll navigate that relationship. So, for example, I want to feel safe. I want to feel respected. I want to feel appreciated. I want to feel playful and I want to feel passionate. And
Mhm.
so I kind of go into those 5 key areas that I want to feel. And I make sure I feel those ways on my own as well. That's an important thing to note. So anything that
Yes.
you want in a relationship or that you won't tolerate, can you hold yourself to the same standards is the first thing that I would tell people,
Mhm.
because that's a good thing that relationships do is they can mirror what we perhaps need to look at in ourselves. And then with those 5 key feelings in my tool belt, I kind of think, okay, I'm not willing to tolerate somebody who now doesn't communicate with me at least once a day because
Mhm.
I want to feel safe. I want to feel like I'm in a relationship that I will also communicate with you about everything. I want to feel appreciated for the little things. I know that I give a lot of love and it feels good when somebody points that out and recognizes that. And I will do the same thing for them. And so those are kind of examples of knowing what you will and won't tolerate is when you're just very clear on how you want to feel, you're clear about your values, and it keeps yourself and your hormones in check because I think that's what really gets in the way is like, oh, it's so easy to say, like, I won't tolerate that.
Mhm.
But when you're so rooted in what you want to feel and you have your self soothing tips to regulate your nervous system, then it's a lot easier to navigate that and to walk away when that relationship is no longer serving your basic needs.
Yeah. I want to go back to what you said about being able to hold your own self accountable for some of those as well. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a song, maybe you'll know the name of the artist, but uh, she sings, "I can buy myself flowers."
Oh, Miley says
You know what that song reminds me of is exactly what you're talking about. This idea of, you know, if you have these expectations of your partner, do you do these things for yourself as well, right? We put a lot of expectations are on other people, and that song was like, yes, I can buy myself flowers. Right? And we should
yeah.
be, and I hate using the word should, but
Mm,
there is an opportunity for us to see that taking care of our own needs also helps us to be better partners in our relationship because we're not
mm,
seeking those things solely from the other person, right? We can go and buy
yeah.
ourselves flowers too.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Amy, I'm so glad you said that. And yeah, creating a rich and fulfilling life and meeting your own needs, having community, having friends, having passions and goals that you're working towards independent of your partner, that will really help as well. And I learned about this kind of triangle theory when I was in relationship coaching myself, where relationships are kind of like a triangle. And so each partner is on one tip at the foundation of the triangle, and they're their own independent, sovereign person, meeting their own needs, pursuing their passions, being their individual amazing self. And then the energy flows upwards to the tip of the triangle. And that tip of the triangle is the third entity, which is the relationship. And so the relationship itself is this kind of separate of the two of you. And it helps, make sure that you both are living your best life. And in that process, you're really able to flow that energy upwards into meeting the relationship from a really beautiful and healthy place.
Yes. Oh, you just gave me goosebumps talking about that triangle. Wow.
Ah, it's a good imagery.
Ah. Yes, yes, thank you. So I know you already mentioned the EFT, the free guide for healing a broken heart. I will post that link in the show notes. And for individuals, I'm familiar with tapping. I love using that with clients. Can you share a little bit as we are ending our time together today on what the heck is tapping and how can this be beneficial for what we're talking about today around getting nowhere in a relationship when we're doing too much people pleasing?
Certainly. Yeah, I love that you use tapping with your clients too. It's definitely life changing.
Yeah.
I learned it at a time as well where I realized I was hitting a break-in point with romantic relationships and just needed something deeper. And so I learned about tapping. Tapping is also known as EFT, or emotional freedom technique. It combines modern psychology with Chinese acupressure, and it's the belief that there's certain energetic meridian points in our body that hold emotion and store those emotions. And so tapping uses two of your fingers to tap on those points in your body very gently and very lightly as you're speaking out loud the emotion that you're processing. And you kind of, it sounds funny the first time you did it. I remember the first time I did it, I was saying all these negative things at the beginning, and I was like, oh, this is supposed to make me feel better. But it's about naming that emotion or that feeling out loud. It gives it less power. And then the script of tapping flows so that you start with the negative, which I don't like to say negative, the uncomfortable emotion. So perhaps it's just, for example, anxiety in dating. You might say, even though I feel, and I'll do this while I'm tapping, even though I feel everybody will reject me, nobody will like me for as I am, I deeply and completely love and accept myself.
Mm.
And there's more comprehensive scripts, but it could just be as simple as that, saying, even though I feel this, I love and accept myself. And you do that and write it away, you immediately feel grounded. You feel your energy is restored. You feel balanced. You feel safe. And it's a beautiful tool to have in your back pocket for those self-soothing moments.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing more detail on that. So, Lydia, such a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining me and for sharing all of your beautiful wisdom. And for those who are listening, please connect with Lydia on Instagram at Heal with Lydia and share your TikTok as well.
Yes, please follow me on TikTok. It's at Lydia Paulina K.
Amazing, amazing. And find the tapping script in the show notes below. So grateful again for you being here today, Lydia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy.
And for all of our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Power to the People Pleasers. Stay tuned for the next one coming soon. Have a great day.